Welcome in to the real Kyper and Bourne show. I am not Nick Kypreos, but I'm sitting where Nick usually does, and it makes me feel very strange. I am very grateful to be joined today by my good pal, JD Bunkis. Bunk, welcome.
I'm going to feel so naked during the show. Thank you for having me. I just realized that this headphone jack doesn't work for the thing. I don't think I've ever done a show like Raw Dog before. Where
You just have to trust
when
we're going to break.
No headphones?
I have no choice.
Why not?
I can't remember a show because it's like, you know what it sounds like in my ear? Like, like the Charlie Brown teacher.
Not only do we have Bunk here for the first time in studio, we have him headphoneless. So looking forward to that.
It's a nightmare.
You know, I don't get a lot of opportunities to move over to the big desk. And I was so excited. And this guy just comes in. I invite him in. He's like, oh, I'm sitting at the big desk.
Bunk's here for the first hour. Sammy's going to join me over here for the second
You
hour.
thought you were going to sit at the big desk?
I was going to sit at the big desk. But I feel...
Forty and I said what exactly right away where we're like, obviously go sit
So
here.
I will say, I like it way more over here. And I am completely dreading going there.
I don't know why you sat there.
Well, because
This is the Kip spot, the host chair.
the first man who speaks sits over there.
So you're just admitting that Kyper is the big dog.
Buddy, it's not the real Bourne and Kyper show.
Yeah. They don't need to be like, it's the real Bourne. Why aren't you real Bourne?
I don't know, because no one wants to pretend to be me.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us today. We're on Sportsnet 590, Sportsnet 360, and Sportsnet Plus. You can find us wherever you find your podcast. And please text us today at 590-590. Second half of the show, McKee and I are going to take some text and talk about all things NHL-wide, Leafs, whatever it may be. So
Big chair Sammy hour.
big chair, Sam.
We're not allowed to talk about the Leafs in the second hour, else we'll get CRTC complaints.
Which, by the way, Bunk, that did happen. This is Leafs hour.
What?
Yeah, that happened. Someone complained in the NHL hour that we talked too much Leaf. They complained to the CRTC.
Yo, I got to say, can I just do this quickly?
Yes.
The people who complain ever about free content, it's got to be the most insane. Like, I think that's the craziest thing you can do.
Well,
like, you can take your pants off, you could run through the square and like start yelling stuff. That to me, I'm like, I could see how I could get there.
Yeah.
I could never see myself being like,
time to report a show for talking about the Maple Leafs.
so here's what I was thinking that they should have done on the show.
Yeah. News of the day: Bobby McMann signed a 2-year contract with $1.35 million per season. Funny enough, Kip and I earlier in the week were talking about about a potential McMahon deal, and I said, "Would you do 2 times 1.25?" And I believe Kip said yes.
No, he yelled. We got in a yelling match yesterday over this exact topic where he was like, with a good playoff run and all this, he's going to be making 2.5. He could make that much. And he yelled at me about it.
He was trying to drive up another Leaf price.
Yes. And I mean, and that was it. I was like, we do that in Toronto where everybody gets so excited and horned up. And it's like, this guy's playing well. Better give him $3 million a year. When we forget he was in the ECHL literally last or 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And they signed him to this contract. And if I was Kyper, I know exactly what the take would be. It would be like, well, that's a bad contract for Bobby McMahon. The Leafs got a steal, and they shouldn't have signed that when he did, but he did it. So,
boys, this is why Kyper sits in the big dog chairs, because even when he's gone, you guys are like, let's pretend to do Kyper's takes.
Well, it's just like people come here for the show. So I got like 15 tweets about, you were right, rub it in his face. And it's the first time I was ever right.
I didn't even get to do it today.
You know what it kind of reminds me of? Justin Hall.
Yeah.
Remember when Justin Hall got his contract and people were like, whoa, already? And it was like a $2 million a year deal. So it was more than what Bobby McMann got. Yep. But everyone looked at that contract the second it happened and said, this guy was just in the AHL. He was a bust of a pick. What are you doing giving him this kind of extension, this kind of term? And it did kind of end up backfiring because they could have had Jared McCann instead of Hall had they not done that contract. But ultimately, it ended up being a good deal for all parties involved. This is a little less money, but I think you just look at sort of using the same template as Justin Hall. Hey, if you get in a right shot D who you think can move the puck a little bit and kill a penalty for you, that has a pretty stock value. It's hard to go below that. And the way I look at Bobby McMann is, hey, you got a depth forward who's basically going to be making close to the minimum, who's got size and who can forecheck. That's worth at least $1 million. Good deal. I don't know how you could say not good deal. He has to be terrible.
Yeah, no, I know. And you look at, there's 32 teams now, and you look at the bottom of most rosters. A guy like McMahon has legit value. The comparable for me was a guy that you and I guyed up once upon a time, Pierre Engvall. When we were like, is this guy a guy? Is he a guy? Early on, they gave him a 2-year extension. He made 1.25, 20, 21, and 22.
So this is the going rate.
It kind of is. It's like you have shown you are out of the AHL.
Yeah.
We like you enough for 2 years. And this, to me, is what should happen with Simone Benoit right now, where you say, I know it looks like you're the guy out of the lineup, and you might be game 1 or 2. We see you as being Joel Edmondson. Watch him be that guy for us. We're giving you the contract to show you that we have the faith that you can do this. Sorry, it doesn't feel great right now. Maybe you get in, but at least you lock him up and, don't risk losing him.
So my only thing with that is, if you're tree living, do you want to jump at that when maybe you can just sign Joel Edmondson to that?
I guess it depends where Edmondson
like they just have a lot of those dudes.
He's an RFA too, Simone Benoit. So they have the control over him going into the offseason. So I would imagine
McMahon wasn't?
No, he was a UFA.
Okay, so then can I ask you guys a question?
28.
Yeah.
If you're him, because like we agree, it's impossible. Like if you love this deal, if you're like, oh my God, I love this deal, it's kind of crazy because it's Bobby McMann and he was
it's
just
a hard one to have a really strong opinion.
Guys, I love this deal. Okay. I love Bobby McMann. I'm like Team McMahon all the way.
I really like him too, and I believe that this is a favorable contract for the Leafs. I'm just saying that for you to be like, this is a foundational moment for the franchise, a seminal moment. Like, no, it's a depth forward that they signed to a depth contract, and they've done it before. And like we said, if you think you're a guy, if you're in the Pierre Engvall class of can play in the NHL better than the AHL, you get the $1 million plus a little bit of bonus on top.
There you go.
If you're him, though.
Well, this was going to be our boy's take, Kit. It was going to be that he shouldn't have signed it.
So, what do you got? Like, do you think that, like, should he have bet on himself? Should he have Fred Van
never made more than $80,000 a year, the first time someone offers you 2.7.
He played 10 games in the AHL until this season.
Yeah.
Of course you take this contract. Like, he could,
but I think, there is argument on the other side where you've already got 10 goals in 40 games, and it's like...
I'm not risking it, man. Like, I think this guy, how old is he? Is he 27, 28-year-old? He spent way more time in the ECHL than he has in the NHL. You're giving me $2.7 million for, scoring 10 goals in 40 games. I am snapping that baby up.
Listen, I'll be Kyper. Give me that chair.
I feel more comfortable if you were.
You think he should have, gone into the playoffs with the long 7-game run that the Leafs are going to have, and his one goal that he scores where it's like his value is going to be so much more than it is right now?
Here's what I would say. It's probably smart because what could he really have changed the contract by?
Well, there is, what if he becomes a third liner for this team who scores 5 more goals this year and a few in the playoffs? Is he worth 2 a season? 2?
That's what I'm saying is, to me, I'm not doing it if I'm him for this reason. You know when you get the cash out on a betting app?
I do.
And you're like, I should take this. This is more money than I've had before, and they're giving me the money. And it's scary to wait for the rest of it. But the real reason they're offering you the cash out is that they think there's a good chance you're going to win.
Yeah.
And so...
Oh, this was 100%. That's a great analogy. They gave McMahon the cash out.
Yeah.
Take the cash out before we have to pay you the full value.
They told him,
smart move.
Cash out, cash out, cash out. And then he was like, you hit the button.
Yes.
And now, and you know what the big fear of the cash out is? Is that if you win, you're like, oh my God.
I left X on the table.
And so for a guy who, as you've said, has not made a lot of money and may not have an opportunity because he's older to not make a ton of money later, if he does have an incredible playoff run, like, do we all like the Tavares, Yarncroc, McMahon line?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did we all not like him playing with Matthew Nyes and that little Bash Brothers-y feel that the two of them had?
Loved it.
So have there not been at least a couple of outcomes where you could see this guy having a down-the-lineup impact? Could we not see...
Listen to Bunk talking himself into a take where McMahon's a $3 million guy.
I'm saying the general manager also is horny for big fellas.
Yeah.
he's like...
Borderline. I don't think that's how he phrases it.
Yeah, borderline. I'd say so. He's like, how tall is that guy?
Whatever.
He's going to come in the studio like, how tall are you, Sam?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, his favorite member of the Kyper and Bourne show is no question Sam. Okay? He likes the lighthouses. Yeah. So if you're the big lighthouse guy and you start in the playoff series and you lay a couple big hits and you have a couple of nasty playoff goals, I think, reasonable to expect that you could have gotten maybe 2.
Once upon a time, I did every team in the NHL played a game on the same night this year, and I bet all 16 games in a parlay.
Yeah.
That was like a fun night.
I remember this.
And I had like 14 of 14 at one point. And I forget how small the bet was, $5, but I was offered $500 to cash out. Potential winnings were $32,000.
Yeah.
And I remember texting with Bunk, like, what do I do here?
Don't.
Oh, yeah, he was. I regret to this day not cashing it out.
Yeah, you not
Seattle
cashing it
lost
out.
in overtime.
You not cashing it out is getting slashed in the knee next game and going down and never playing another NHL game.
Sometimes you got to cash out.
Yeah. No, degenerates, bud.
No, this isn't degenerate. You never look at gambling at what the cash out is. Let me give some advice. Where's my camera? Okay? Boom. Here. Don't do it. You want to just be living a normal life like you could just get this. The bet that you made, that is the sunk cost. It's never what it's offering you. Yeah. The bet is the bet. You bet $5, you were going to lose $5.
Yeah.
You never had $500. You bet it to win $32,000. If you would have won that $32,000, you're going, oh my God, this is an actual life-changing amount of money for me.
I agreed with you then, but I agreed with you now. I didn't do it.
Yeah, if you cash it out for $500 and you win,
it affects
welcome to never sleeping again.
Well, I'm not sure the $5 to win $32,000 is the right level of gamble.
You're 14 out of 14.
I don't
guess what?
know.
This is a one-off long shot, stupid bet that the two of us were.
I do think that this was the right move for him. I really do.
Yeah.
I just think there's a lot of risk, man, and it's a hard game. It's a fast league. One fall.
All right.
You have one chance to get paid. They throw 2.7 in front of you.
Fall. He's a young,
I'm with you
healthy
both. We're 11 minutes into the McMahon conversation. We got other stuff to get to.
People want. This is what the people want.
Hot McMahon talk.
Ultimately, though, I think you can look at this as an awesome story for him. Like, for him to, he was scratched. The game that Tavares and Marner both were sick. He got scratched. Yeah. Comes in, gets a hattie against the Blues, was it? And then, just found confidence and has been a really good contributor to the team ever since, and then found a way to, he's a healthy scratch. He cleared waivers. He's got offered $2.7 million. Yeah. Snap that baby up.
It is a good one for the Leafs here. So he looks like when you look at their lineup, their forward lines, you're like, I'm okay with wherever they have him by and large. But they did shuffle things up again. We've got Bertuzzi, Matthews, Yarncroc right now. Mitch Marner's still out with an injury of some variety, which is something. Do we want to start with Marner?
Do you want to hear the coach talk about it? It's a pretty short clip.
Yeah, let's see what he's going to say.
I think it's clip 3, Derek.
Do we have it? No. Bunk can't hear anything.
He didn't skate today, so read into that what you will.
Can we have that one more time?
No update on Mitch. He didn't skate today, so read into that what you will.
No update on Mitch. Read into that, or he didn't skate today. Read into that what you will.
I don't like that.
No, nor should you.
Well, why would anyone say read into that what you will?
I think the implication is he's not close. That's a real concern here.
Yeah, if you're telling the Hounds at Leafs practice to read into something.
Yeah, why would you do that? I actually think that, this is not a huge deal, but I actually kind of think that that's dumb by Shilton. Just say you will get an update soon.
It feels like a little bit of don't ask me about it for a bit. Like it's going to be a ongoing thing, which, Mitch Marner hurt. He's had a high ankle sprain years ago, but, we talked to Kip, seems to know people about things, and he had some concern, mentioned ankle as one of the potential things. That is something that can nag and never get back to 100%, or even knee. It's unlikely it gets back to 100%, so I don't know. Some concern there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's how I would have not been concerned if he was like, he's back in the lineup Thursday, he's feeling great.
Yeah, right.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's
awesome.
It was a weird fall that he took because he fanned on the one against the Bruins where everyone was like, if he had a shot that, they would have won. And then he comes around, falls on his knee kind of awkwardly, kind of twisted around. I don't know what the hell happened to him, but pretty clear here that he's probably not going to get to 100 points again, which is
that's a killer.
A tough break for him.
Sniffing at 98, 99. Right now he needs 24 points to get there. He's got 18 games left. So it's within his points per game pace.
Yeah, but if he gets back.
There.
If he gets back.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only, if I'm trying to do optimism spin zone, read into it what you want. Because read into you want, that's you pick your own adventure, right? Read into it what you want is potentially, hey, we lost those 2 games to the Bruins, and now we're not catching them. We ain't catching anybody. We're stuck in our lot in life, and so we're going to play things uber conservatively and let the guy heal because we don't really need him to come back.
Love that.
Or that Sheldon's pissed off that they're being so cautious with him and he wants him in the lineup because he's desperate to win every game.
Yeah.
The Leafs are 9 points behind the Bruins right now, and they are 8 points clear of Tampa. We are at the point where they are finishing third in the Atlantic. They do have games in hand on Boston. 3 games.
Have they ever done that before?
What's that? Finish
Been
there?
locked into a playoff spot before the season
Every
starts?
November, usually.
Has that ever happened before?
But it is funny that this year, at least, they don't know who they'll be playing, though it looks very likely to be Boston.
It sure does.
Because Florida came back on Dallas down 3-1 last night.
3-zip.
Period. 3-zip.
They're down 3-zip. Yeah,
And
they
one in
came-
regulation.
Yeah, one in regulation on a power play goal. Their power play looks dynamic. So
Jake Andres.
better hope the Leafs can figure out their power play or their penalty kill because it's not looking so hot. Yeah.
Before the show, we talked a little bit about Marner, the shape of their team, how it's going to look going forward. I don't know. I thought you had an interesting angle on the Mitch thing.
Well, I think what you're looking at here without him in the lineup is going to be a reminder of how this sounds stupid. Just bear with me.
Okay.
How important he is. Like, yes, the $11 million winger is important. But that if you're trying to project Leafs rosters of the future, like, okay, well, when is it going to change, right? Would they ever break up the quote-unquote core four? I think that the idea that the Leafs are ever going to have an off-ramp through trade with one of the 3 younger guys, Marner, Matthews, and Nylander, that's done. Like, I just don't see a scenario where the Leafs get bounced by the Bruins in the first round this year, and they go into an offseason and say, well, we're going to try to entertain a Mitch Marner trade, even though he's only got 1 year left on his deal, and the team that's going to be acquiring him is going to have to pay him a buttload of money, and that all of a sudden the Leafs are going to be saying, what can we do? How are we going to improve this? Can you turn this guy into a defenseman? That used to feel like a reality. That was an off-ramp that we had for changing the Leafs' core look. And to me, it's like, this
Mitch
is actually...
needing a contract totally puts you're not going to get value back for him.
And he has no move. I just don't think that this is ever now a reality. Like, to me, the Leafs, and even part of the reason that they weren't desperate at the trade deadline is because they know they're locked into this team until John Tavares is off the books. And then we'll see moving forward what they do with the Tavares contract, like how much of a haircut they get him to eat, whether he's with the team at all if he refuses to do that. But like, any idea that we ever had of looking at a Leafs team that was not going to involve these 3 on major tickets, I think that went out the window when they decided to fire Kyle Dubas, that they went into an offseason with a brand new general manager and with William Nylander needing a new contract and then re-upping that in the season. Like, to me, there's no stakes for these 3 guys this year. There's no like, hey, Mitch, you have a poor playoffs and maybe you're the guy to go for a defenseman. It's like, nah, I don't think that's a reality.
If you're entertaining trading Mitch, if you're trading him after they lose in the first round with which means he probably was very similar to some of the other years that he's had in playoffs. He needs a new massive contract. Like, you couldn't be trading that asset at a lower value.
So true.
Like, there's just no spot where you'd be like, a team would still.
The point of all this is they're stuck with these guys.
You're not getting a 3rd and a 5th round pick for Mitch Marner here. I'm not saying that, but it's not going to be close to what you think you're going to get back for a guy of his.
You'd done it last year after they lost.
But even then, I guess you have the extra year. You still get way more value last year, clearly. But this offseason, you could never have an asset with less value than him going into that.
Like, you agree? Like, because it feels like one of those, if you're just realizing now it's too late, and that's how I feel with this. I'm like, oh my God. There's no chance. It is
suddenly you're going to watch this core of Matthews, Marner, Nylander this year, and even if they don't win, you're going to see it again next year.
Yes. There's no potential, well, if they don't get out of the first round, there's going to be consequences. Like, that's done.
No move for Austin, no move for Willie. Mitch is...
Yeah.
I think we all know what the move is if they don't get out of the first round.
What is it?
It's the coach, clearly.
Yeah, well, that's
your only move, really.
I'm throwing this at you guys like on the spot. We never discussed this, but
that's okay.
Could you the other weird one would be, could the move be Riley?
Just can't. You just don't have any D. You look at the D and you're like,
it's a D for D.
Yeah, I imagine if you're like, they're going to give us Slavin and we're going to try it with a D-oriented D-man or whatever.
Yeah.
You might consider it, but it just seems like the 1-for-1 trades we see in the NHL are so rare, and it's usually like, this guy we thought was spectacular has really been disappointing. Middlestat and Byram just did a thing.
There's 2 separate conversations to me with that, because on the surface, hockey-wise, I'm like, yeah, I'd consider it. But the other side of it's like, he's the number 1 heart and soul guy that cares the most and is like most well-spoken and seems like he should be the captain. And there's 2 separate conversations to that. There's 2 separate different guys with him in the playoffs versus him in the regular season. It's a very complicated one. I think it's one that I would consider for sure.
Of course, it's complicated.
But like, I don't think what's his. I mean, if they all have no move clauses, he definitely has one. So
I'm not sure if he has one or not, but
I
I'm
mean,
sure
they
he
all
does.
got
I'm
one.
sure he
Yeah.
does. Yeah, he did because he actually took a bit of a
Camp,
haircut.
David Kampf got one, so I would imagine that he has one.
Bert has one. Domi has one.
Yeah, and in that case too, you look at it and it's just, hey, if he has that measure of control, you can't get back equal value. I just to play devil's advocate, like I agree with you guys.
Yeah.
It's complicated. It's unlikely. It's whatever. This is stupid hypothetical, but if you do have this much of a track record in your regular seasons of, hey, we win a lot of games with this guy.
Yeah. It's just the least viable thing because you don't have an ED. So and there's just so rare for a 1-for-1 trade. Everyone's been looking at this. If it doesn't work, it's because they haven't had enough D and they had too many forwards. You're right. They're kind of stuck with this look. So one of the things we're going to do in the back half of the show is look at who the core has had over the years and compare the best team Bs that they've ever had and ask if it's this year and why it isn't, presumably.
Did you want to talk about goalies? Saw you had Woodley on your podcast today, and I saw the quote that he had about Wall, and it was pretty strong.
He loves Wall.
Pretty strong from a guy who knows everything about goalies. So, my thoughts on it in terms of who they want. We've talked about this, who they want.
Oh, it's not even an opinion on who they want. They want the kid. Like, they want Wool.
Yeah.
Like, that's a matter of, like, essentially public record.
Yeah.
It's like you want to try and dig into who they want. It's like you can scratch the level of the surface and, like, you'll get it. Like, they want it to be Wool. I think the more interesting point of conversation with the goaltenders right now is, like, how do you handle it moving forward if it takes Wool a little bit of time to kind of find his game? Like, I don't think he's been poor by any stretch of the imagination in the 3 games he's been back. He actually had one really good start, and then he had one that wasn't good enough against the Bruins, and then one where he let in 2 bad goals. Yeah. Okay? Samsonov is playing his very best. You're looking at a situation, I think, right now where you haven't played in a week, right? Essentially a week. You got a game Thursday night. You're probably going to lean with the Samsonov. Like, it doesn't... Like, they've gone to Wool before. They can say that they're playing the calendar, but you're probably going to lean to Samsonov. And then it's like, are you just going to do the split? But what happens if Samsonov continues to be, like, the better of the two who's actually winning the games, but you still do believe that Wool is the guy and you're trying to give him as much of the net? Like, can you just flat out just continue to do the 50-50 split? Because I think you kind of can. I think that's maybe the route here.
Yeah, I think you save yourself a lot of explaining to the guys and playing favoritism and hurt feelings. And you say, until there's reason not to, we're just going to take turns, fellas. Like, Wool's up next. It's been a week. You'll go again Saturday night, Sammy. Like, I think that's kind of how that ends up looking. You're right. Wool had one good showing. The Boston ones were tough, but I like the idea of throwing them back into the fire and be like, it's Boston. It's a hard game. Didn't get the wins. Didn't play great in a back-to-back, but you got to get him going. You need him at his best a month from now.
That's it. Is if you are believing at all that he needs run, you can't just play Samsonov and say we're riding the hot hand and he's getting more net. To me, it's like you have 2 scenarios. One is Samsonov remains the hotter of the two, and they split the net equally. The other is that Wool becomes the hotter of the two, and Wool actually just takes over the net, and he's becoming like the far more primary, actually getting starts. I don't think there's a reality in which Wool, regardless of how poorly he may play, if he was to play poorly, that they would go, Samsonov's getting 3 and you're getting 1. Like, you're getting 25% of the starts.
It's fascinating to think if he's not playing well by the postseason or even is just okay, could the Leafs be the rare team who legitimately uses both goalies in a playoff series?
I hate that.
I hate it too, but
it's one of my least favorite things. The only time I like the multiple goalie move is when you have, like, the established starter that has a bad couple games and you put in the backup to kind of change the mojo. Like, they've done it. It's happened in years past, like with a Holtby. When he was bad again for they put Grubauer.
Murray and Fleury.
Who was the goalie in the backup in Chicago for Crawford? Scott Darling. Scott Darling came in a couple games for him when he was bad. Like, I feel like when there's a starter and a backup delineate, it's much easier to just be like, shake up the team.
How about Boston last year? They didn't even go to Swayman.
But that's the thing. I mean,
till 7.
Till 7. I just think that's a way more complicated thing in the playoffs. If you have 2, you don't have 1 in the playoffs to me. Like, it's a much more easy shake-up move as opposed to trying to pick who the goalie is in the playoffs is terrifying to me.
It's the exact same thing, like, when it comes to the outcomes. I think that you could see a scenario where Samsonov gets game 1, and if he performs badly, then Wool is immediately in the net. If Wool wins the net and he loses game 1 and he plays badly,
Go back to Wool.
Yeah. Like, I think that it's going to be two standards that you might say unfair and you might say meritocracy or whatever, but I just, everything you listen to and hear, the Leafs just their goaltending coaches, their front like everyone believes in Wool.
One guy's under contract next year, and one guy's not.
Well,
but
and
I don't
also
even think that's
Samsonov,
it.
the way he plays is part of this, right?
Yes.
Like he doesn't look trustworthy.
Yeah.
He's bad when he's too busy, and he's too busy when games are big. If you look at the arbitration that he went to with the Leafs, the case they made against him is that when the chips are down, when the stakes are high, his style does not work.
Yeah, they've said that publicly, and they've actually tried to, when they first brought him in, they tried to tweak both he and Murray styles, actually.
Yeah.
And, I think that their feeling was one guy was a little less receptive to the changes, or was actually
Which
implementing.
could be some resentment or reason they want Wool to win,
Yeah.
is maybe they hold some of the, hey, this guy wasn't coachable as we wanted him to be. And
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Can I ask you guys one more Mitch question?
Please.
Mitch-related question before we take this break?
Mm.
The longer that Matthews goes, like when you guys said the lines there, you only told me one.
You want it?
Well, no, it doesn't matter. It's
Yes,
more.
it does.
It's more so like.
Well, maybe people haven't seen
Well,
it.
yeah,
but
we actually, Bourne and I have always had we love talking about the lines and what we like about the lines.
Of course.
Okay, so you got Yarn Kroc, who is essentially the old reliable for this team, right?
Yeah.
Like
He's
he is.
Kerfoot.
Yeah, he's the, what's it called? The tape.
The Flex
Seal.
The
He
Flex
is.
Seal.
Flex
Yeah,
Seal.
he's the Flex Seal where
Yeah.
they're like,
New Flex
slap it
Seal.
on, it'll help a line go.
Okay, you don't have headphones in. We did hear the drop.
Okay. Oh, did it happen before?
Yes. No, just now.
Oh,
but
okay, yeah.
after we
All right.
mentioned it.
Nice.
But
Hey, Rendale.
let's just do a visual meme.
So let's say the worst part of the Marner thing is realized. There was like real Matthews MVP talk.
Mhm.
And like, quite frankly, I thought that those Bruins games borderline played him out of that conversation just because they were such big games and he was so absent from them and whatever, flew. But let's say he doesn't, like this trend continues now because we all agreed that there was hey, maybe he had the flu, maybe he wasn't going very well. Like,
Yeah.
it was tough games against the Bruins.
Tough week.
If that extends now into the next couple of games, like, what is that going to do to you guys mentally?
In terms of how you feel
Everything.
about Matthews?
Just like approaching the playoffs, Matthews, that impending, because if you were Mitch Marner, right, and it's not that he's never had success away from Mitch, right? Like, it's a dominant player. He's scored most goals 5-on-5 since entering the league, like all those things. Two things can be true. He's still obviously the best goal scorer on the planet, but if he's not able to kind of impose his will with these guys and these different looks, and, we're going to talk about different, like, hey, moving the little pieces around in Team A and Team B, and we're discussing even the idea of ever moving off of Mitch Marner, like, what does that say, if anything, to you, if he does continue to kind of have middling numbers or doesn't feel as dominant while Mitch is out?
To me, it's playing into this fantasy that doesn't exist. Like, Austin Matthews' goals per game are the same with Mitch and without Mitch. And Mitch Marner in the playoffs has not made Austin Matthews into some, like, elite game breaker. In fact, they've both been pretty bad, by and large. I thought last year they worked and were a part of it and came through. They did win a round, which we talked about before. People seem to forget.
They were, and they were very good.
They were
in that
very
first
good.
round.
Yeah.
They were the main reason they won. They had, how many
Oh,
points?
that line, yeah.
What do
I
we
thought you
do
meant the
now?
Leafs as a whole. I was like, they got outplayed in that series.
Oh, well, they outplayed the. Anyways.
Yeah.
We
We've done this
don't need to
before,
go down
right?
that
They
road.
lost in the weeds here. But no, so I think that anyone who is a goal scorer who plays with Mitch Marner is going to benefit. He is an awesome player. And I think he'd be great for Willie, just like he was great for John when John scored 47. Whoever plays with this guy is going to benefit. So, yeah, he's a crucial whatever.
You can't change my opinion on Matthews. I have a very strong, this opinion is there, that he is a breathtaking goal scorer, an amazing player, one of the best players I've ever watched play for the Toronto Maple Leafs, with or without Mitch Marner, and that in the big games, it holds me back from truly loving him because he's had he hasn't had the moments yet. I guess he was really good in that first round against Tampa, which will always be measured against what happened in those next 5 games where he got shut out and was a ghost and was not around.
It's
Yeah.
amazing
Right? Like, it's
how
just-
Florida colored the Tampa series, because those
100%.
guys really did move the needle and made some big plays and big moments.
For sure.
But yeah, that Florida series, everyone's just like, oh, that invalidated.
It also doesn't help that the ones you go to before, you're like, well, surely there's this incredible other series. It's like, no, you just have the Tampa series. So,
That's-
like,
there's one.
When you add, it's like, Columbus. Like, why wasn't there more there?
They scored an overtime winner in the bubble.
Yeah. Why wasn't there more against the Montreal Canadiens? Remember what the narrative was after the Canadiens?
He got put in his pocket by Philippe Deneau.
Yeah, but it was also them going to the media saying, well, we got chances.
We got lots of good looks. He just didn't
lots
fall.
of good looks. He just didn't fall. It was like, okay, well, yeah. That starts to wear thin more so. So it's like when you say, hey, it goes or it evaporates or gets colored by the Florida series. I'm like, I think it's more colored by like the entire body of work than anything else. Like, he's played in a lot of Game 7s and he still doesn't have a goal in one of them.
Mm-hmm.
You got to get one of those.
Yeah.
That would be really helpful.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Absolutely.
That would sure help the clutch narrative.
He is the guy, right? This whole thing is, we're going to talk after the break about supporting cast and stuff, which has never been the point.
No.
Right? It's never been like Andre Kasha is going to get them through. It's like these guys are going to get them through or it doesn't work. Now, I forget where I recently heard this, but like research on when players finally win around, and I apologize to whoever wrote this article, when they win around after they first break in the NHL, for first round picks. It's typically 6 to 7 years. It's a long time before most of these guys break through, win around, find it, go from Steve Yzerman to Steve Yzerman. Yeah. Or Steven Stamkos to Steven Stamkos.
Or Ovechkin, who was really late.
So the time for these guys to be the guys is not over, but it's now.
It's absolutely now.
It's been now probably for a couple years, but it's now.
Dude, this just drove me nuts after the trade deadline. Like, I was losing it. I tweeted something about it. I basically did an entire 2 shows on it. Like, I don't want to make this seem like a straw man because I think that's annoying when people kind of over-exaggerate something to this effect. Like, but this entire core 4 was supposed to be built on the idea that those guys would be so dominant that you felt the advantage night in, night out.
They should be better than the other team's top line.
Everybody else was like, when they were moving these deck chairs around, that it wasn't supposed to matter as much. And yet, like, here we are going into this discussion, and I know this one's for fun, but hey, which one of the pieces around them were supposed to be better? And you go, were you supposed to find diamonds in the rough? Yes. Were you going to have misses? Of course. There's ever going to be a general manager that was going to nail every single one of these things and ever nail every single contract in the cap era. You were obviously going to have misses. You were obviously going to have stylistic fits. You had no margin for error, but you were supposed to have a constant. And the constant was that the 4 of these guys are just a force. Yeah. That the other side goes, oh my God, we hate this.
They're coming in waves.
But this is what I'm just talking about, where it doesn't happen for any 22-year-old core of a team.
Probably right.
It hasn't happened. There's nothing,
Well, do you know what's historical is they got paid earlier as the 22-year-old core.
Sure. They got paid like they had won the cup early.
You sacrificed that. Yeah. You sacrificed that forgiveness from the fan base that left the door the second you all went, no, we want the most money and we're going to change the way contracts are done.
Sure.
Especially when they did it and then others.
But you, as an analyst, should be able to tease those things out separately.
Kind of.
That they are, for sure, but that they are, as players, on the ice, devoid of contracts and money. It takes some time and there's a learning curve and they can still become the guys I mentioned, the Yzerman, the Stamkos, whatever.
I agree.
But the way they're perceived is definitely through the lens of, oh, you want the money, you're the guys.
And you mentioned the supporting cast. Like, I'm going through these, like, for the exercise we're going to do after we break here. And, boy, there's a lot of zeros.
Hold on. But, okay,
and
I agree.
Playoff series, as you know, you've watched playoff series your whole life, comes down to one of the guys in the bottom half of the lineup.
Max Talbot shoots 2 in Game 7.
Kicking one in for you off his butt in the Game 7. And it's just like they never got one of those moments ever.
Winner,
definitely.
Yeah, and that's why they won the series. It's like you need these moments where one guy has a big moment and they just never got it. And I'm not absolving the core of
that's not what it sounds like.
But it's just like,
but you're right that cores are often saved by someone else who gets in a big moment.
Man.
Yeah.
Sure. And this is all I'm saying is
Ray Allen's 3 for LeBron.
It would be fine if you felt like it was really the cores that were letting them down and all the other guys were carrying the weight. And you looked at the zeros and said, boy, if you could have just gotten 1 or 2 more. But it's usually the guys that are making you feel a little empty about it are the main guys. That's why, again, I like the idea that they didn't load up at the deadline this year, because what I'd like to see is what you just said in terms of teasing out when these guys are going to get there. I'm there with you. I'm going, these guys do look like they're more in their primes. That's why I think the Bruins games were so unsettling, is because people were seeing the winning streak and going, okay, we're cautiously, tepidly going to step forward and sort of believe that maybe you guys are maturing and that you are willing to win these hard matchups. And they beat the Avalanche, and you go, damn, they look good in that game. And then they played the bad Bruins, who have had their number, and it looked the exact same. Yeah. The exact same.
It didn't look the same, though.
Okay.
Go ahead.
The only thing is, I want to see them have that series against the Boston Bruins where they dominate. I want to see them have a series against the Florida Panthers where they look like they're the force of the series.
Like where they went into Edmonton, beat them 3 straight times in the Canadian division, and we went, oh my God, look out for the Leafs.
And then the world truly was ending. Justin Hall shut down McDavid for 3 straight games.
But I'm saying, in the playoffs, impose your will, and if you guys lose the whole, like, oh my God, you didn't have enough, then good. Then you should actually be able to figure out, all right, what are the other pieces that they need around these guys? Let's sell other assets. Trade Easton Cowan. Trade whatever you need to get, because now these guys are good enough.
Right.
And they've proven
you're not sure enough about the core to do that.
I'm not sure enough that they've entered that phase of, oh my God, okay, well, they've hit the 27-year-old and they're definitely going to do it now. Like, I'm less sure about that part of it, even though we know the money part.
Yeah. All right, we're going to talk more about this after the break. You're listening to Real Kyper and Bourne. Welcome back to Real Kyper and Bourne Show. We are joined still by JD Bunkis, which is great because he's going to help us parse through the Team Bs that the Leafs have had over the years. So it's become a running theme on this show, whether it's true or not, it's true. There's the Team A, which is the core guys who are here, and they've been a part of this whole thing. And every year, they try and tape on different pieces and try to make a Stanley Cup champion. Not sure if you guys know this. Hasn't happened yet.
Were you ever on, like, a Team B?
I don't think I've ever been on Team A.
No. You ever had, like, anything, any type of... Because, like, I grew up in Waders, Yukon, and we used to have, like, Team A and Team B for hockey tournaments.
Yeah.
Because they would want to send as many kids down to get as much
legitimate, like, whole group of cast-off.
Yeah, because they would be like, well, we want to... There's not enough hockey tournaments up in the north, right?
Yeah.
So when they send the kids down, they're like, we can't just only send 30 kids.
Right,
like
all the kids got to go.
We got to send more kids. It's not all, but it's a lot.
Yeah.
Like, I made it.
Yeah.
But I had one year where I was on Team B.
Yeah.
And there was like truly nothing more intense that you wanted than to beat Team A in practices or to like do better in a tournament.
One of my favorite chirps was that Team Canada B could beat anybody at a hockey tournament too, but that take has kind of gone out the window now.
I don't know. I still think they'd be very
They'd be competitive.
Wouldn't they be so fun though? Like, wouldn't
Canada
actually
A, Canada B?
Wouldn't Canada B be the team that we all rallied around?
For sure.
Everyone
Canada
did.
A would be like those pretty boys on Canada A.
Just the worst thing you could do for your reputation is fight for Team Canada.
You want to be
Who's their starting right winger for Team A? It's
One guy
probably the one
defects
here.
from Team A. He's like, I don't want to be those prima donnas.
Want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
So looking at all the Team Bs, we're going back to the start of when John Tavares joined the team. Not going to read off all the names, but do you have a year where you go, in retrospect, that was the best Team B? And how does this year's group stack up to previous Team Bs the Leafs have had?
To me, it's a very obvious answer, and it is last year.
It's the best one?
Based solely on success. I mean, they won the first round since I was in high school.
Yeah.
And they had, Ryan O'Reilly, Sam Lafferty, Nola Chari, Kerfoot, Bunting,
Those are players.
Zach Aston Reese, Hall, and Shen, as well as, the other guys that are still on the team, Yarn Croc, Nyes, Camp, those guys are still on the team or whatever. But to me, that deadline, and I'd hate to give Kyle Dubas credit for anything, but that deadline was the type of deadline that should have won this core more rounds than one. Sorry.
But it's funny looking at that because so much of that was deadline. O'Reilly, Lafferty, Achari, Shen, that all came at the deadline. A lot of these other Team Bs were a part of the team for longer. Is there a year for you?
So I think this is I'm not trying to ruin the game.
Oh, here we go.
But
let me move these goalposts to see what
just a touch.
Here we go.
Where it's like, are we getting the fully healthy team, like the fully team? Like what?
I think you're going to pick the same team as me with that question.
Well, yeah, just because if that's the team, if that's the fully healthy team, and the it's the
Montreal.
It's the Montreal team.
Yeah,
no doubt about it. Like if you would have gotten the fully healthy Foligno and the fully
healthy Foligno changes things for sure,
dude. Foligno.
So we're moving goalposts then.
Oh yeah, they got moved.
Okay, well, but that's the thing. Okay, but if we're playing this game...
Hockey's not allowed to happen where guys get hurt?
No, but here's the unfair part, is if we're talking about this year's core, right now, the guys around them are all healthy.
Yeah.
So it's like going into it, you would have felt the same way heading into the postseason. Like we're doing it all in the time capsule.
By the way, they had Jake Muzzin on the back end.
Yeah.
You had Spezza on the third line. Pierre Engvall, Bogosian was a part of it. You had a lot of guys that you felt could contribute.
I don't know. I like that kind of is. The only thing is too is like on paper you look earlier and you say, wow, they had Zach Hyman and they had Patrick Marleau and they had. Yeah. So I think you can spin it in terms of a talent argument. I also think if you're talking about the best core, is there wait, we're only doing post Tavares.
Well, go ahead. Where are you going to?
Well, I was going to say kind of like the rookie year where they decided to keep all the own rentals, which turns out to be kind of like a bit of a mistake, probably.
They still had Kadri, JVR, Bozak.
Yeah, is that when you had that team felt a little balanced. They went out and got Brian Boyle and it's kind of, again, though, they're the babies. They're not who they are now.
Right.
So it's a tough one for me to do. I get it. Last year.
What year was that?
What, the very first year that they went?
16, 17.
16, 17?
Yeah.
So 16, 17. Yeah, that's I'm just pulling it up here.
Yeah.
Like that's when it was fun.
But
that was the most fun.
That's when it was fun.
But also,
if you're asking me which one was the most fun, that is the answer for me.
Absolutely.
Not beating Tampa last year?
Well, yeah, that was great.
No? 3 overtime winners?
No.
The thing is, we weren't beat down in 2016.
Yeah.
We weren't like, that was like when it was still the
just
hope.
Happy to be there.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying is those were carefree. I remember where we were for some of those games, like hugging and having the time of our lives. And it was genuinely the feeling was.
Connor Carrick played 6 playoff games that year for the Leafs in that playoffs.
There you go.
Yeah. Martin
at a moment.
Yeah, that decor was Connor Carrick, Martin Marincin, Nikita Zaitsev, Roman Polak, Jake Gardner, and Morgan Riley.
Good Zaitsev, though.
Good.
What's so funny about
That's crazy.
What's crazy about looking back through some of these teams is you go, if you remember the peak of their career, like, they had Joe Thornton, they had Patrick Marleau,
That's what I'm saying.
When you realize where these guys were at different stages in their career, it's a little different.
Can I tell you which team it definitely wasn't?
Which one?
2020. Dyson Barrie year.
Yeah, well, that team was
non-playoff year.
Yeah,
that team was on the way out of the playoffs.
That's what I'm saying. That year was the stinker year. That was this team has never been more fraudulent.
Kapanen, Robertson, Ceci, Dermott, Janssen, Gauthier.
Can you give me one Riley Nash Leafs memory?
There was one.
Actually,
Did he play? Did he play a single game?
He
got in.
Wore number 20.
He did wear number 20. I'm surprised he retired. I couldn't believe Edmonton got to wear it.
Wore number 20.
Yeah.
And my memory was people going, he's going to lock people down come playoff time. He's ready.
No, because he had been hurt and then he showed up.
They LTR'd him.
Yeah, but that was it. They LTR'd him and they were like, wait till this guy gets in the playoffs and then he's locking everybody down. And lock people down, he did not.
No, he was hurt.
Those are my memories. Narratives and numbers.
2018, 2019, to me, was a really good one against the Bruins when they lost again in Game 7 there.
You know what's funny is
Janssen, Dermott, Kadri, Kapanen, Tyler Ennis, which I just completely forgot was the thing.
He was actually pretty good
Jake Gardner, Patrick Marleau, Jake Muzzin, Trevor Moore, Zach Hyman, Ron Hainsey, Connor Brown, Nikita Zaitsev, Freddie Gauthier.
Great example of remembering names not where they were in their career, because you hear Trevor Moore and you're like, they had a 30-goal guy or whatever Moore is going to be this year. He wasn't that at that point.
Absolutely body bagged Zdeno Chara in that series.
He did.
Sent him packing into the boards really hard.
I was actually looking into this once upon a time. They have been competitive in these first-round series that they've lost, so that they've actually won a lot of playoff games. Like if you're Austin Matthews, he's probably won 3 playoff games a year for 7 years. He's probably got 20 playoff wins or something.
Dude, you know what I'm thinking too with this question about the core and the things around them is, so I think I'm with you, Bourne, like looking at the teams. I
do want to talk about this year's
Division
team again.
Yeah, we will. I think it is the North Division team in terms of deepest, and that was if they're healthy, like they probably go on a run. It's probably the best team that they had. I also think
Tavares got hurt there too.
For sure.
Yeah, 10 minutes into the first game.
I think that one of the big ones in this in terms of core around them is Jack Campbell that year was red hot and awesome. And if you're talking about like how you actually felt in net, out of all the goalies they've ever had, like playoff Freddie Anderson was always spooky. Right?
Yeah, I liked it more than you guys.
I love. No, are you kidding? I love Freddie Anderson. I still apologize for him to this day. I still have a committee. I still get fights with friends about
He's my number one crosshairs guy.
Yeah, we've had no question. It's a blood feud. It's almost ended our friendship at times. But he let bad goals in the playoffs. It was like, okay, so this is where the friendship dies.
Yeah.
Samsonov last year, He felt good. Still is Ilya Sanson. And Jack Campbell, we thought for a second was like a guy.
Yeah.
The Oilers did too because they gave him all the money. They said,
Right.
look at this guy. He's amazing. We should give him all the money. But if you were doing like the confidence rankings of the goaltenders, where they were at heading into the postseasons every single year outside of maybe Freddie year one, it's got to be Jack Campbell.
And this is the worst year by
Far.
Unless
It depends how you feel.
Well, there was some Vezina buzz for Jack Campbell during that season.
That's what I'm
well,
saying.
remember he was-
the first 3 months. Remember we were doing 6x6 conversation.
I remember that. And I said,
Yeah.
I actually compared him to Cujo and said, give it to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a tough
I
take.
can't believe you brought that up.
I
Yeah.
did. Yeah, whatever. I mean, I said a lot of dumb stuff. I talk for 2 hours a day every day. I said a lot of dumb stuff, buddy.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's almost like you're trying to.
What really stuck out to me going through all these
Mm-hmm.
is that this year isn't that bad in
No,
terms
it's
of
very
like
comparable.
measuring up to what they've gone. Like, it's not
Correct.
the best, but I do think that there is plenty there. If the Stars play, I guess the biggest difference would be at the point at where John Tavares is in terms of his
That's fair.
play. That's not as high as it has been in years
But that's
past.
not a part of this exercise.
No, that's what I
right?
mean. But
Yeah.
like to me, the core around the Stars is good enough for them to win.
Yeah.
It just comes down to them being good enough for them to win.
Love
Again.
that.
Again.
So
Your thought on this score?
yeah, this surrounding
Sorry,
cast.
this surrounding cast.
I think that there's more here to be unlocked. I never felt like anyone was Tyler Bertuzzi, like a fifth guy who, had a 30-goal season and played and has had playoff success. Like, I feel like he could still, like, in those Boston games, as much as you felt bad about other things, you felt like, oh, that's it. That's the guy we thought we had there. You saw Domi being competitive. Like, there were these glimpses of, I think all we said a lot was that we wanted this team to be different. They didn't have to be better. We just needed a different look. They couldn't be the same. I feel like it is different.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's going to be successful, but it's different.
So if I was really going to like boil this down in the most simplistic way, I felt good about the Leafs going into the postseason twice.
Mhm.
It was
This year one? No.
No, it
Last year.
It was last year. That team and they won a playoff round.
Yeah.
And it was the North Division year where they were gonna. And it wasn't just the Montreal Canadiens. We didn't know, and it's a bit fraudulent. It's hard to really figure out what they had because they played a bunch of bad teams essentially for the entire year.
bunch of checked out teams that hated
like
being
it's just
there.
and it was in the bubble. There's all these different things, but I'm just saying, heading into the postseason, times where I was really allowing myself to believe and go, man, maybe they could make some noise.
Yeah.
It was those 2 years.
Yeah.
This year, what I will say is slotted in sort of third, where I'm going. If you believe that in the years past, the defensive style has resulted too much that way where they couldn't get that secondary scoring, I just think I could see a scenario where Nyes, McMann, Domi, Bertuzzi, a lot of these other guys actually end up with a big goal in a playoff series, the one that you guys are talking about, and we'll see kind of how that materializes.
For sure. And I also think heading into it, like last year, the big complaint was the Leafs are going to finish second in the division and they're still going to draw Tampa. It was like, what? They can't get away from Tampa. The Tampa Bay Lightning, at that point, they would have won the Cup the year before. This year, it's now feeling more like it's looking like Boston. I am the lone person I feel like that I ever talked to who's like, I don't think Boston's that great. Like, I know they just beat the Leafs a couple times. I got plenty of excuses why I don't think it went the Leafs' way in those games. I'm not, I don't know. Did they have a shot this year?
I just got a great I've been to the future. Prepare yourself for a first-round exit.
Thank you. We get that text in response to just about everything.
Oh, I love that.
I do, before we lose Bunk, recommend that you check out his show, the JD Bunkis Show.
And Leafs Talk.
Fantastic. And
It's
Leafs
JD Bunkis
Talk,
podcast, by the way.
also a Bunk show. Leafs Talk is really good. I get
Bourne
to
loves it
sometimes.
so much. It's his favorite show. That's why I got the name right.
JD
He's like,
Bunkis
oh my God,
podcast.
every day I'm just always downloading the show. I don't know.
And follow Bunk on Instagram and Twitter at JD Bunkis. Bunk, thanks for joining us, pal.
Always a pleasure, fella.
All right, we will be back after this. We're going to talk to Kristen Shilton of ESPN, and we'll catch you in the NHL hour. Welcome into the real Kyper and Bourne show. I am your host, not Nick Kypreos, but Justin Bourne. Hello, Sammy.
Hey, man.
How are you?
Feeling very far from my little desk over there.
I know, but it's lovely to have you. at the
I'm
big
really
desk.
happy to be here. I got my papers spread everywhere, which I don't really have the ability to do over there. I'm ready to rock.
Nice.
How
Well,
you
yeah.
feeling?
I'm good. I'm a little weird being in Kyper's spot here today.
Yeah.
He won't be here for the rest of this week.
Yep.
You and I are here. Welcome to our NHL Hour. I'm thrilled. Welcome to our NHL Hour. Live on Sportsnet and Sportsnet 650 in Vancouver and Sportsnet 960 in Calgary. As always, this hour of Real Kyper and Bourne is brought to you by Bet365. Going to be joined by Kristen Shilton of ESPN a little bit, which I'm looking forward to. Got some news and notes. We will take your text at 590-590.
Breaking down what the biggest story of the day is nationally, Bobby McMann signing a 2-year contract extension.
We
you know?
People in Vancouver are
Vancouver.
dying to hear about
yeah.
man.
They're all on the seawall just screaming it out to everybody, being like, Bobby, that guy can play. We love the Leafs. Anyways.
Yeah, so we probably won't talk about that so much. But we will talk about all the other things that are going on in the league. I have an article up today on the playoff races in the Eastern Conference and kind of handicapping how those shake out. I think it's live on sportsnet.ca right now. I'll do the Western Conference for Friday. Looking at it a little bit today. Florida Panthers get a big win last night, separate themselves a little bit from the Bruins.
Yeah, I watched that whole game last night. It was an excellent hockey game.
Yeah, two good teams.
Kristen made a few mistakes in that game. Took a bad trip late that cost him the game.
If you look at it, like that was their only ad. And if he's not great.
No, like I haven't watched a lot of Stars, but I watched that full game last night. And I'm like, maybe some of my takes weren't as great as I thought they were at the time. But no, he's just getting used to a new spot, so it won't kill him too much. But I don't quite know what makes, I know the Panthers have great players, and they weren't even the thing that scared me the most about last night watching that game for the rest of the NHL is they weren't even that mean last night.
Yeah.
Like
they weren't
acting like they usually do. Like I watch most Panthers games and it's like, wow, they're playing the whole game offended and they're in the scrap and they make these teams back down from them.
Yeah.
The Stars are a pretty big team. They got a lot of good players, fast players. Their decor is pretty big. They had a guy like Tanev. And to me, it's just they didn't get into that at all. And they just played great hockey. They got 3 power play goals. Their power play is terrifying. Yeah. That, to me, is what really should scare the rest of the Eastern Conference and probably the Western Conference if we're really going to handicap this thing, is that they can really beat you in any possible way.
Yeah.
Like
that was in Dallas. They were down 3-0, and they won in regulation.
They don't quit at all. They're still in the game. They get great goals. They got different guys contributing on different lines. Like, that Barkov looks unbelievable. Kachuk filters one from the point. Like, I don't want... you look at who the favorites are, and I'm sure we'll do that in game time later this hour. But to me, I people saying they're frauds, and maybe they could lose in the first round. Maybe because it's hockey and weird stuff happens. But I really don't see a team that has the recipe to beat them when they're on.
No, the Atlantic Division, the power plays. So Tampa is first in the NHL at 29.2.
First, still.
Yeah,
that's keeping them alive.
Toronto and Florida are tied at second, 27.2. I know how you feel. It's different.
It is so different, but I don't watch them every night, right? So it's like I'm watching the Leafs power play every night where they have their frustrating nights, but then they go in stretches where they're snapping it around.
Yeah.
With the Panthers, I don't know. It seems like in their sweet spot. Terrified of that team, Barney.
I do think too. They're not pulling away from the league, winning the President's Trophy. By miles.
No. They still have stuff to play for. They're not going to have that checkout mode. Anyways, look at the Kristen.
Yes. We are now joined by Kristen Shilton, NHL reporter for ESPN. We are so excited to have you back on, Kristen. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, guys. How are you?
We're doing good. We're just talking a little bit about the Florida Panthers and trying to figure out, basically, if anyone else in the East can contend, can anyone else hang? How do you handicap the top of the Eastern Conference? Do you see anyone else even in a class with the Florida Panthers?
I mean, it's tough. You can talk about the New York Rangers. I think that they have definitely gotten even stronger. Lately went through a bit of a dip there, but you're really seeing them play some great hockey. I think that's probably connected to Igor Shesterkin really finding his game. Again, he's been sensational after a bit of a mediocre by his standards start. And that's really been a game changer, I think, for the Rangers. And, Boston's been a bit up and down. They haven't been as consistent maybe as they were at the start of the year, but they're still going to be a contender right there. And I just think the Atlantic has so many deep teams, and Florida, though, they just continue to separate themselves from the pack. But as you say, not by leaps and bounds. It's not a situation like last year with Boston, where you felt like maybe they took their foot off the gas. They took things for granted a little bit down the stretch. And I don't think that the Panthers are going to do the same. And I felt that when I went on a preseason visit down to Sunrise, and I spent some time with the Panthers and talking to Paul Maurice and Matt Tkachuk and Alexander Barkov and those guys. They felt like they had something special. And I don't think that they would take any of this for granted. So I really like them. I like, I like what the Rangers are doing right now. But there's a lot of teams, Toronto among them, that you could really see being strong contenders in the postseason too.
So I mentioned, I don't know how long you were listening for there, Kristen, but I mentioned that the thing that stands out to me, and I watched that game last night, is just the separate ways they can beat you. Like, because most of these games, you watch Florida Panther games, and they are just playing the entire game offended. As I like to say, they're just so mad the entire time. Every little thing sets them off. And last night, they didn't even do that. They were just, it was a solid, I guess if they're having to come from behind, it's a little bit different. But they just can beat you in any kind of way. And to me, that's what terrifies you going into the playoff series with them. Any way they want it, they can play.
Yeah, I would absolutely characterize them the same way. And just that when you have that capability, when you're not a one-trick pony, when you don't need to score 6 goals every night or hold an opponent to a certain number of goals, or you have to be great on special teams, or this one player has to be fantastic, or the rest of the team can't go. They just don't have that. They are multifaceted. There's so many layers to what they can do, and they can turn it on at any time. You might see them maybe have a sleepier first period, but then in the second, you really can see the way that they'll have, whether it's Sam Reinhart, who's having such a fantastic year, whether it's Bobrovsky in net, whether it's you're getting, that Gustav Forsling 8-year extension, so underrated. He's just a guy, like, he was a waiver wire guy.
Crazy.
And you bring him in, and he's just become a linchpin on that back end for them. And, they can just do so many things so well, and they'll hurt you in so many different ways that how do you prepare for an
with
opponent
flying
like
elbows, they'll hurt you.
Especially if it's a playoff series, right? Like if you're playing Florida in the first round, it's like, well, what are they going to do in game 1 versus what are they going to do in game 2? They just adjust so well that I think they're going to be a handful for whomever ends up on the opposite side of the ice for them.
For sure. Well, that's Sammy's Leafs fan anxiety, Florida Panthers talk. We've got that off our chest.
I hate to admit how much I love watching them play.
Yeah.
They're just an excellent hockey team. They're just great goaltending, excellent forwards. Their defense is clearly stacked. I like to watch them.
I know.
That's the part that kills
good news.
me.
You're going to get to watch them a lot of rounds if I had to guess.
That's great.
Having someone like yourself on who you're covering hockey in the U.S., one of the hot topics these days is expansion. Like we've heard Utah talk, and most recently Atlanta. How viable, how quick is Atlanta going to happen now? It just feels like the NHL just did expansion, and here we are again, ready to add more teams.
Well, I think that there's just such an appetite for more, and you talk to players about it. And I've had a lot of conversations with several guys in just the last little while about, would you want a team in Utah? Would you want that to be the next spot? And some of them are sort of wary of, not diluting the product, but you don't want to do too much too fast. You want these fan bases to be able to get established. You want there to be, a foundation of success there wherever the league goes next, because that benefits every player, playing right now, as well as, the next wave too. So I think that it's an intrigue. They're curious about what it could look like. Atlanta obviously is a market that they've been in before, came out of it. And then you look at a place like Utah, it's somewhere new. It's somewhere maybe has a bit of that more Vegas-y type of, there's just something about it that I think people are curious if a team could succeed there, if the NHL could, really, get a grounded, established fan base the way that teams in Vegas and Seattle have. But, you sort of saw it in how the NHL responded to Anson Carter's, his push for the Atlanta, Redux. You can see that they're like, well, it's always good to know that there's interest. Like, we're happy about that. But who's cutting the multi-billion-dollar check? That's the other thing, right? Is that it's the same with diluting the product. How many investors are you going to have? How many people are you going to have to answer to if you're the NHL? You know, there's questions behind it from a business perspective that you do need to look at. But I think from a player's mind, the more the better in a lot of cases, if it can be successful, if there's a really sound business structure there. But that's where you have to be careful. You don't want to do too much too soon because you don't want to see teams fail. That would just be the absolute worst case scenario for the league and for the players.
Well, I know Sportsnet pays really well, Borny, but I'm not sure they can cut Anson's check to
Multi-billion.
But to me, with these expansion teams, Kristen, it's so important, like the early success stuff. And you know what happened with Vegas, where nobody knew what the hell they were doing with that expansion draft. And they just got handed an incredible team with all these assets that they've turned into this long tradition, 7-8 years of just winning. And to me, that if you're going to go to Atlanta, they're going to have to kind of not rig the expansion draft again, but make it really favorable so that they can be competitive right away. Because were the Thrashers ever good?
That's a great question.
I don't really remember them ever being very good. And they always just kind of had these weird teams. I remember the drafting high, like early. I know it's an obvious thing to say, but having the early success with these expansion teams, especially in the non-traditional markets, like Seattle's more of a sports town
for sure
than, I guess, Vegas had never had a professional one. But you need a good, decent team for these non-traditional markets to get behind. It's got to be early success.
Well, it does. And you've also just offended all of the Atlanta Thrashers lifers that will never give up on their team coming back.
Yeah, their Twitter accounts.
Excellent work there. Yeah. Prepare for them to find you. But no, it's the early success. And it's also, you look at the different ways that Vegas and Seattle approached building their franchise. I mean, Vegas was they knew there's so much competition for them, not just from a sports perspective in Vegas, but like everything else that you can do when you're there, right? Like it's not, it's a market where if you're not willing to put yourself out there, if you're not willing to really push, and obviously the Golden Knights have their detractors for their creative salary cap gymnastics. They always seem to find a way.
That's a creative way to say that.
It's, I'm being judicious, but it's true. I mean, the rules are the rules, and if you stay within them, it's just that there's teams. Then you look at the way Seattle did it; they were very methodical through the draft. They wanted to sort of squirrel those picks, and they weren't great in their first year, and then they were better last year. But then now this year's been. It's just they haven't pushed as hard as the Golden Knights have to be as competitive as you need to be to compete for a Stanley Cup within the first, 6-7 years, twice of your, but that's Vegas. It's just, they're so unique because they're so willing to push the envelope, and they have, by committee been very good from the drop. So that's good for them. But I think we just saw with Seattle, it's not the only way to go. But obviously, the Kraken haven't had nearly the success that the Golden Knights have so far.
Yeah. Kristen, I wanted to ask you a question. Having covered hockey in Canada and now being in the U.S. and covering hockey, to just kind of get your take on the difference in the way the game is consumed. I myself lived in the U.S. for a long time, and I know, ESPN can be a star-making machine sometimes, and Connor Bedard is a guy who is probably receiving a lot of that benefit now. Tonight we have Ovi up against Connor McDavid. Do you see a difference in the way the game is presented to the country and consumed by fans?
I don't know so much how it's presented. I think that just the stars and the teams that are highlighted are just very different. Yeah. I think that, in Canada, we talked so much about the Leafs and, especially the Canucks this year and how good they are. We talk about the Oilers and there's always a constant conversation about these Canadian teams, it's so, so important for the league that they be good. And that, that's not really necessarily the same narrative that you're going to have in the US. I mean, it's New York, it's Boston, it's stars like Bedard. There's a reason why he's so popular already. It's just he's playing for the Chicago Blackhawks, and everybody wants the Chicago Blackhawks to be good again. Because I lived in Chicago during some of those dynasty years, and I've never seen anything like it. Yeah. And I've been fortunate to cover, several other championship teams. And no disrespect to anybody else, but oh my goodness, the way that they just love hockey there. And it's star driven, right? And they want their next Kane, they want their next Taves. And that's really, I think what drives as well, you look at the way that the game is presented is, I think it's a lot less about the team and the history as much as it's about the stars and what they're doing now and the success and the next wave and the next generation. And there's no right or wrong way to do it. It's just, I think in Canada, we love to talk about legacy, and we love to talk about rivalries, and rivalries have been going on for a century, and it's more about the new in the I think in the American market. It's more about, this is what's great now, this is what's trending now, and I think that's why the Vegas Golden Knights have been so embraced by that fan base, not just because Vegas is a great sports town as we're seeing in a lot of ways, but just because they're so new and they find new ways to I think appeal to their fan base, and that's something where they don't feel stale. And granted, they're not even a decade old, but still they make a point of really trying to engage in different ways, and that's where some of, I think, the US based teams do separate a little bit from the Canadian ones, and it's what I think fans really appreciate, and what drives a lot of that fandom.
So you mentioned Connor Bedard in your question there. I know he's dash 36. He's on the first page of the Masters leaderboard here.
You're a good player in a bad team. What chance do you have?
I find it incredibly impressive that he's at a point per game. Like he's at 50. He had 5 points last night. He's at 51 points in 52 games. It's been a bit of an uneven uneven rookie year, clearly because of the injury that he had after he got nailed. But this is, I think, going as well as you could imagine if you're the Chicago Blackhawks. Like, this guy is a real thing, and they have another star that they can build around here.
Absolutely. I mean, missing, 6 weeks with a fractured jaw, and just knowing that you weren't going to have the one sort of bright light of the franchise
Tough
in
one
your
for the
midst
season ticket holders for those 6 weeks. So like, what am I going to watch? A lot of Mackenzie Entwistle.
But you see, just even last night, you see, what a lightning rod that he is, and it's for the league, yes, but it's good for the league, for Chicago to have something to be excited about, and their future is so bright with that kid. He's so good already, and there's a maturity to him off the ice as well. And granted, I obviously haven't spent a ton of time around him, but it just, in the interactions that I have had, he is very poised. He seems, to understand the position that he's in. And that's not always the case for some high draft picks. They really can be overwhelmed by their position. But I think we can tell by the way that Bedard, first of all, just basically said, I'm coming back and skating. I'm going to put this cage on, and this is just how it's going to be. He's that competitor on the ice, but he also very much doesn't let what the pressure of, being in Chicago and being that, quote unquote, next one there, interfere with what he's able to produce. And that's, I think, where the Blackhawks have really lucked out, because you don't know. You can do all the interviews, you can do all the character tests, but until you actually see these young players under the spotlight, you just don't know how they're going to react. And if they can maintain what made them special, and most do, fortunately, most are, they have good people around them supporting them. And obviously I think Bedard has that. But just from an on-ice perspective, my goodness, what the talent that he has already as a teenager. If this is the beginning, what is his ceiling? I can't even fathom it.
He just had to throw in the bubble, and he went back to the World Junior mode.
Superhero.
He was just, it's a good look. I'm putting it on, and I'm going to skate. Nobody touch me, but don't get in the way.
Very comfortable. What's funny, is you say, what could he be? And it's looking around the league right now, and you look at where Sidney Crosby is. Like, I know that's a ridiculous sort of ceiling, but, you feel like they're just at the other end of the spectrum. And so I do want to ask about Sid and the Penguins, and watching an aging superstar who's not playing like an aging superstar. He's playing like a superstar. But, what's going to become of Sid, of the Penguins? There's a lot of expectations and superstars and tire fire happening there. What's to come with the Penguins?
Oh, man, I was just thinking about this earlier today, and I thought, it was a great thing, I think, for Alex Ovechkin to have the milestones he was chasing late into his career, because Washington obviously has taken a bit of a turn in the last few years, and they haven't been a playoff contender. They haven't been in that position. But for Ovechkin, for the star, he has had the watch, right? Like we've all been talking about him, and it gives some juice to a guy that maybe you can't hand him playoffs every year, but at least he has that. That's not where Crosby is. Crosby is the team guy. He wants that success. Not to say that Ovechkin doesn't want that same success, but I think he understood, okay, we're going in a different direction now, so this is kind of going to be my narrative from here. But Crosby is in the middle of having to answer for the fact that Pittsburgh, the wheels are kind of falling off, and they weren't supposed to at this stage. There were supposed to be a few more good years. It's why Kyle Dubas got the players that he did, that he went and got Riley Smith, that he went and got Erik Karlsson, that, you know, he's kept the core, or I shouldn't say him specifically, but the core has been kept intact there, because there were supposed to be good years left for Crosby and for Malkin and for Letang. And really since the bubble, it's just felt like it's not there. And so they've made the sweeping changes. They gave Kyle Dubas this incredibly rich deal to run the team. They've tried, but it's just, they're not fast enough to keep up with. Yeah. And that's in both places almost. It's like you added veterans, and it's not where the league is at. The league is changing, it's adapting. And I think Crosby is adapting with it to a certain degree, but the players around him, you have to be, you can be physical and you can be tough to play against, but you've got to be quick, and you've got to get those plays in transition and those plays off the rush. They have to be there. And if they can't be, then everything else has to be so tight and so dialed in. Your goaltending has to be so incredible. Like watching Tristan Jarry last night, for example, you know, I know the one goal was called back, but still it's just, you've got to be so perfect in every other way. And that's not where the Penguins are at. So where they go from here, I don't know, but you wish that there was a bit more of that milestone watch almost for Crosby, so that there was something for him that you were talking about on a nightly basis. And it wasn't that, wow, it's really might be over for the Penguins, because we don't know if it is, but it might be.
To me, the great lost milestone for Sid is 2,000 points, because you look at the prime of his career from, well, not the prime, but like in the middle from 2010 in 3 seasons after that. In 2010, he played 41, then 22, then 36 games. Crazy. Right? So if he had played, you know, let's say, give him 78, 79 games throughout those seasons, that's probably an extra, give him 100 points, maybe 150 points there. And then it's closer to 1,700 points, and he's still at a spot where it's like, you know, that's a bit of a chase.
Chasing, yeah.
But to me, at this point, he's 1566. He's won 3 cups. He's got 2 gold.
Just got to ask for a trade to Colorado now. Yeah, that's all it's left.
There's only one thing left, really, and it's to play for another team and to chase a cup as like a second fiddle. And I don't like. I want it to happen, but I really don't see it. I don't see
it either.
No,
I can't see it, because it's just, there's too much history there, I think, for him, that I think it's one of those where if this is the end, I don't know that. I wonder if you wouldn't rather, if like, because you've won it all. There's nothing left to win particularly. It's just
more
the last days. It's just in the last days of your career. Do you want to, you know, Patrick Kane obviously is an example that we can use recently, going to different teams, and you know, how much of that would Crosby replicate? I don't know. I think that there's such a bond there between city and player that's where he wants to be. And if it ends up that the last couple of years are bringing in the next wave, I don't know. You almost don't want to speculate, because whatever you say, you could be totally, you know, they could pick it up next year and you got egg on your face. So you never want to count out Sidney Crosby.
Be fun in Canada
in any way.
Would be fun in Canada.
ESPN's hoping not.
Yeah, we are, but yeah,
exactly. But it's just one of those things where I think everyone is waiting to see how this offseason goes, because it will be a very big one for the Penguins and what their next direction is going to be.
For sure. Last one, we'll let you go. Just want to get your thoughts on a West winner, because we all talked about Florida and the Rangers. Do you have one out there that you see as a runaway fave?
Oh man, the West it's always so tough. Like the Central to me is always stacked, and then it's never the team coming out of the Central. And then you look at the Pacific and you're thinking, okay, is Vegas gonna step it up now that they've made their acquisitions?
Boy, people be mad.
Mad.
Oh boy.
Like, are the Oilers are they for real? Like, are they really going to run it back and be able to, make a Western Conference final appearance? What about LA where it was great and the wheels were off there too. And now they're making a bit of they did nothing at the deadline. That's what's curious to me is I'm like, what do they know that we don't? First of all,
they're not great.
Other than not getting Linus Ullmark, allegedly.
Right.
But, so to me, I don't know if I see a clear, and of course, Colorado. Don't let me not mention Colorado. That's important. But, I think for me, it all hinges on the first round. Dallas, like you say, they added Tanev, but if he's not great, I don't know about Dallas. They're a wild card to me. So I like some of those teams, but for me, we're going to learn a lot about the West in the first round, probably more than we will about the East. I think there's some established contenders there, but the West, the first round is going to be big.
Yeah, a lot to figure out. We appreciate all your insights and opinions and everything. It's Kristen Shilton of ESPN. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Of course. All right, Kristen was up here for a couple of years covering the Toronto Maple Leafs and the rest, and made a good decision to get away from the
she was in the meat grinder for a few seasons for sure. It's just if the playoffs start today, one of Winnipeg, Colorado going home, one of Edmonton and Los Angeles going home, one of Dallas, Vegas going home, one of Nashville, Vancouver going home. But
in 3 of those series, it's like you're going to have a team who went all in and had real cup hopes going home frustrated, and people will probably lose jobs over that.
I saw a tweet. Was it John Shannon that put it out there about what it would be if the matchups were
1v8?
Yeah. Okay, here it is.
I love 1v8 stuff.
So I'll bring it to you. So in the East, it would be Florida, New York Islanders, Boston, Tampa Bay. Oh, baby.
Yeah.
New York, Philly, Carolina, Toronto.
Toronto gets mopped in that.
I don't know. I much prefer that to Boston or Florida.
Would you?
And in the West, Vegas, Vancouver, Dallas, Los Angeles, Winnipeg, Nashville, Colorado, Edmonton.
Vegas, Vancouver?
Yeah.
I guess Vegas got to, they're going to climb up.
Yeah, they got to get going. But to me,
the one
that
thing
just seems a little more normal.
Well, 1v8 at least allows for these races, like there's such incentive to climb from 7th to 6th or, whatever it is, to move within that tiering. So, yeah, I hope eventually we do get back there. Do you want to do game time after the break?
Sure, we'll do game time after the break. Perfect.
Okay. When we come back, we'll do a little bit of game time and talk about some news and notes around the league.
I want to talk about the Sabres, the Sabres.
And a little Bo and Byram action.
Yeah, I have some thoughts on them.
I know, me too. Okay, we will get into that after the break. You're listening to Real Kyper and Bourne. Welcome back to Real Kyper and Bourne. Kip not with us, just Sammy and I today, talking about all things NHL, and it is time.
You think Kip's booked his flight yet?
You know what? I'm not even sure. He had a trip planned for this weekend. He was like, I don't know, I'll figure it out. I'll check the Air Canada website soon.
March break, one day before, it won't be an expensive ticket. It's March break, though. It's quiet on the roads.
Yeah.
It's noticeably quiet subway roads. It's nice.
Delightful.
All right. It's game time presented by Bet365.
It's game time.
It's game time presented by Bet365. Visit the app for the latest odds and find out why it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 19 plus, Ontario only. Please play responsibly. Now, I was flipping around during the break at some of the fun future stuffs on Bet365. And I said, there was one that said player regular season goals. And I was like, I wonder what's going to pop up. The only option on there right now is Austin Matthews. And there's 2 different numbers that you can bet on.
Okay.
The first number is 64.5. And the over on that is minus 250.
Okay.
And what's he at now? 54, right?
54.
So that's 10 more goals in how many
18
games? Okay. So that's below his, he scores every night, apparently. So, and under that is plus 200. And the other total is 69.5.
Yeah.
Plus 350 over, minus 500 on the under. So they really don't think he's getting to 70.
No.
This week hurt him.
I got to be honest. I don't either.
And I don't think that's the worst thing.
No.
That we're having this big conversation about him chasing and him staying in games maybe when he should be taking a rest. So I found that very interesting that they put that up there because I think 64.5 is an excellent number.
It is. What's interesting about that one to me is Connor McDavid, I believe, had 64 last year. Is that right?
I'm looking it up right now.
And so
I was near there.
Yeah. What was fascinating was McDavid is the best player in the league.
Mm-hmm.
The year before, Matthews wins the Hart Trophy, scores all the goals, and Draisaitl basically says to McDavid, like, you should just score all the goals.
Yeah.
Okay. Went and scored.
64 goals, 89 assists, 153. He has 953 points in 630
I know,
games.
it's a joke. But so he
Wow.
blows by Matthews. Matthews hits 60, wins Hart. He goes and gets a 64 and says, see, I can't do it. This year, you know what McDavid has? He's got 24, I think.
He's got 24 goals and 79 assists already.
Because he's done. He showed you if he wanted to be the
How
goal guy,
sick
he
at
could
hockey.
be the goal guy. That's not
That's rude.
It is. So now it's like, okay, if Matthews is going to make a career being the goal guy, you better get more than McDavid did.
So so moving past. So you think where would your money lie on that?
I think 67's a reasonable pick.
So you go over 64 and a half.
I would.
Okay. I would maybe sprinkle a little bit on the under that.
The problem under 64 and a half.
Yeah.
The problem is if he gets to 67, the Leafs got this playoff push.
Yeah.
Or do they start going, oh, we got to play him a lot, see if he can get to 70, it becomes a thing.
So this is a fun one. The country of the Stanley Cup winner. The USA is minus 330. You got a lot of teams to go from there. Canada is plus 240.
So we're going to have 4 teams.
So it's the Oilers, who are very good.
Very good.
Vancouver, who is very good. The Jets, who are very
Very
good.
good.
The Leafs.
In the playoffs.
Yeah, they're there.
Yeah.
And that's it, right? We're not forgetting anybody? Yeah, the Habs stink, Flames stink, Sens stink.
Yeah.
So it's those 4 teams. It's not the worst number.
Well,
at
you know
plus
what? It's not the
240.
worst number because you might be getting 2 number 1 seeds. Vancouver and Winnipeg may win their divisions.
And they're not going to
win their division.
And they're not going to be playing each other in the first round.
Right.
So you might be able to get past
And Leafs
that.
on the other side, So what is the Canadian number to win the
Plus
cup?
240.
And now the Canadian teams, they win a lot of cups, right?
They've won a lot in the last little while?
30 years, man. 30
Oof,
years.
that's a really long time.
Devastating.
they
7
should-
teams, 30 years.
They should change that.
They-
But I'm sorry, Canada. I don't want it anywhere else than down Yonge Street. So it's a very tough thing for me.
I would like people to text us at 590-590. If you're a fan of a Canadian team, do you just want the cup back in Canada or does it have to be your city? Because I would love to see Winnipeg win it. I would love to see Vancouver win it. Obviously, I'm in Toronto. It helps our show. That would be great.
Yeah, I would like that.
I have some Oilers resentment from my dad's era. I grew up being like, they ended my
I get
dad's
that.
team streak.
100%.
It was a whole thing that there was that big rivalry. So I was raised to be like, no Oilers, no Rangers. I would have maybe a bit of a hard time. I do think I have bet the Oilers with my real money as the only Canadian team I have money on to get to the Cup final.
Okay.
So I believe in them as a team, but I don't know if I want to see it.
So 4 games on tap tonight. Some decent ones here, actually. Kings and Blues, that's decent. That's a bit of a stretch for that one. Nashville, all of a sudden, who is extremely watchable. And they're playing the Winnipeg Jets tonight in Winnipeg. They are a plus 130 underdog. Winnipeg is minus 155. I have a tough time with that one. I don't really know how to lean on that side.
I am ecstatic. You called them extremely watchable. I am on the game tonight.
Nice.
For Wednesday night hockey, Winnipeg Jets, Nashville Predators
God, you
coming
work
up.
hard.
Yeah, I want to do my best because they don't make me do a ton this summer. Anyway.
I'm looking forward to watching that. But I would say the creme de la creme is the Colorado Avalanche visiting Vancouver. Yeah. And to me, this is a surprising number. You can get plus money on Colorado in Vancouver. They're starting Casey DeSmith tonight. Maybe they rally around that. I think, is Colorado in the second half of back-to-back? Did they play last night? No, maybe not. But anyways, to me, that's a surprising number. I always like value on Nathan McKinnon, that team. And Vancouver minus 120. Casey DeSmith, don't love that. But, they're pretty good in that building. So they could be fine. That was Game Time, presented by Bet365. Visit the app for latest odds and find out why it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 19 plus. Ontario only. Please play responsibly.
The Nashville Predators are a very, if you and I sat down, eyes just a blank piece of paper and said, write out their roster.
I'll get a few.
Might get halfway there. It's a lot of Evangelista and Cole Smith, Michael McCarron, Kiefer Sherwood. There's a lot of names. You're like, he's in the league. Huh? Spencer Stastny.
I have to say that if what Brunette did, right? Brunette? Yes. Yeah. What he did, if he was in a Canadian market where
Jack Adams talk,
but where he cancels the boys' trip to the Sphere to see you two, and they're all so fired up, doesn't just cancel for the guys on the team, front office people who work in the everywhere. Done. We suck. We don't have any accountability. done.
Doug, who's been washing socks all
Doesn't
year
care.
just for a breath of
He's
sunlight.
like,
He's a U2 tattoo. Sorry,
to
Doug.
see with or without you. Just can't wait.
Just once in my life before I die. Not today, Doug.
Canceled. And they go out, and they have been smoking hot ever since.
Yeah.
And like, if you're a player, like, yeah, we're hot, but God, I don't want him to look so right. Like, that's a really incredibly gutsy move by him. It's just,
I don't think it's that gutsy.
in this day and age, Borny, it is. In 2005 or 2002, that doesn't even make the news.
Multi-billion-dollar industry. You're not performing.
I understand that. But for it to become a story where he canceled this thing that everybody was excited about, and like, we're going to the Sphere. I went to the Sphere when I was in Vegas. Marginal. I didn't see U2. I saw
Sphere was marginal.
It was a very cool experience.
Yeah.
But like, we went and saw like a postcard from Earth. So you're doing like all like, but it was very like, it had a message where it's like the Earth is screwed and you guys are all screwing it. And it's like, I had a couple high noons. I'm like, this is what I expected. Like, this isn't what I signed up for.
They built this multi-billion-dollar thing, and you're like, entertain me.
Yeah, but then they had cool robots. Like, it's a very cool experience, I can imagine. But for him to cancel that, I think in this day and age, it's gutsy. And for them to get red hot after, and them to not solidify a playoff spot, but they're pretty close to slip. Like, they're 7 points up on Minnesota with a couple games in hand. I give the former Owen Sound Plater all-time single season holding record for points.
Really?
Andrew Brunette, a ton of credit.
8-0-2.
165 points.
I think that there is a real appetite in the NHL from owners for coaches who will make hard decisions now. Mm-hmm. And say what you will about Tortorella. The Flyers are going, they're going to be in playoffs this year when I don't think anyone thought they were. You talk about Tocchet and the success that he's had.
100%.
These sort of taskmasters in an age where everyone gets a talking to and their soft voice and whatever. There is really something to be said for these guys who handle things a little bit more honestly and aggressively.
The thing is, it's like there's always zags in every sport, right? Like the running back thing where you don't want to pay.
They're all the same.
You don't want to pay running back, but then all of a sudden this offseason I'm seeing like every running back's getting paid. So maybe it's zagging back the other way. You can win. The popular take after the Penguins won the cup, where it's like, you can just get Ben Lovejoy and Letang, and you can win the cup.
Yeah.
And, baseball, where it's like, I don't even know what baseball is, the zag or whatever. But what I'm saying is, going to the guy who's a bit of a meanie has kind of come back in here, where you see Laviolette having so much success with the Rangers. Like you said, Torts, Tocchet, who I don't think is full meanie, but
he's honest.
He's honest.
And actually, look at what's happening with Winnipeg, where Rick Bowness came out and said, that was the worst the guys have ever played. And this is part of what I'm going to do tonight for this Nashville Winnipeg broadcast, is they had their worst game of the year one night, got a mean talking to, and they had their best game of the year the next night. And, I played for a junior coach, and this is in my book a little bit more in depth, but throwing sticks and breaking stuff and chaos, and it's not fun.
What's the name of that book, by the way?
That's Down and Back.
And where can you purchase that?
Anywhere you get your books, man.
Good.
Amazon, Indigo, go nuts. But, there was something to be said for the idea that there will be actions behind the words, and Sheldon Keefe has done that more this year, tried to be that accountability guy, and I think it's reasonable to say that not everyone needs a hug all the time.
And Bonus seems like, by all accounts, to be one of the most loved guys in the league.
Yeah,
like
he'll give you hugs.
Every single guy that comes around is like, yeah. So I think when you have that reputation, but every so often, you just get in front of the microphones and be like, these guys rot.
Yeah.
That holds way more.
After the last season for
100%.
Bonus, too.
And I think even Torts, who used to just be full meanie, I keep wanting to say these words I'm not allowed to say.
I know.
We suck.
He walks it better now, where he does say nice stuff.
Well, you know what, though? Daryl Sutter didn't change.
Perfect example.
He
didn't have, like the Peltier thing.
Yeah.
Like, what number was he?
Yeah, as a kid makes his NHL debut, and it's like, you got to have some.
Yeah, and now he's back on the ranch.
A waste of 8 days.
That is an all-time line in NHL history. So, one thing we wanted to chat about, Buffalo Sabres. So last night, you and I, we did game time. You talked about Detroit. It was plus odds. I also had my own money on them at plus odds. They need this. They've lost 6 in a row. They're in Buffalo, playoff race.
Turns out
Buffalo starched them.
Maybe it makes sense why they're plus money now that I look at it. But I had a couple takeaways from that game. which is crazy to have takeaways from a
Buffalo-Detroit game in March.
I'm going to say this one quiet. There's a chance that Bo Byram, Casey Middlestat trade is bad for Colorado.
Real bad.
Casey Middlestat.
I know we're a couple games in here, but
Casey Middlestat was the Sabres' leading scorer, which the way they're having a season and the way they look, I mean, that's not necessarily
45 points or something.
Every team score. Every team is a guy that scores, regardless of how good or bad.
Someone has to lead bad teams in scoring.
And I think he filled a need for the Avalanche, and they clearly like him. And having a second line center, kind of slot in, because we had conversations about Colorado and how thin they kind of seemed underneath the big boys. But I don't know if he should have done it at the cost of Bo Byram.
Yeah.
Because I remember him in that. Who did they beat in the final? The Lightning, right? They beat the Lightning in the final. And I remember, I was like, this guy is a Team Canada lock type of guy. Where
that high?
He has the pedigree. He played for Team Canada, the World Juniors. Like, he's that type of guy where I was like, not for the next team.
Yeah.
But for a guy that in the future could be on that team. And then he had the concussion issues and he went away and you kind of.
Just 22.
You stopped hearing about him.
Yeah.
I was watching that game last night. I know he had 2 talks, but outside of that, he is up and down the ice, man. You can't.
3 games of the Sabres, 3 goals, 1 assist, 4 points.
You cannot
Plus 4.
that ability to get up and down the ice, buddy. He flies.
Like, we talk about how hard it is to get a top 4D. You're at the deadline and teams are falling all over themselves to try to get Chris Tanev. We believe here in Toronto that they have offered a first for Tanev. Like, what people would do for a top 4D is a lot. This guy has a chance to be a top pair D. A guy who scores 50 points, like more than that potentially. I know that's a high ceiling for a guy, but he's had 25 and 42 games one season. It is a legitimate bet, as I've seen an NHL team make, that a guy can't stay healthy.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
believe that Colorado had full belief in the player. They said, we just don't believe he's going to play enough games to matter for you.
That's fair. And, the other pushback on that, too, is that Darlene's a lefty, Owen Power's a lefty, right? So it's like, I'm going to need Kyper in here for his lefty-righty stuff, but I'm pretty sure Power's a lefty, too. And I'm just quickly looking it up. He's a lefty as well. Yeah. Byram's a lefty. It's like, you want your 3 best defensemen to be lefties, but to me, you're just betting on the talent.
Well, what's crazy, that's a good point. But hold on, because this is, the Senators are in this very pickle where it's Chychrun, Shabbat, and Sanderson. Mm-hmm. And we've heard Chychrun's name come up because someone's got to go. You can't. And what's even crazier about this is Byram wanted out of Colorado expressly, expressly behind scenes anyway, because he wanted out from behind Cale Makar.
Yeah.
He wanted the chance to be a guy. And you go to a team with 2 other lefties, who are top guys. I wonder if eventually they have to do something.
But if you're Buffalo, promise me this. I'll write this down, whatever day is March 13. We're not having any Buffalo Sabres good playoff conversations before the season starts next year.
No.
I will not have that conversation or about the Sens either. Until No. Until they were like close to playoffs and competing near January, February, no conversations. If you're that kind of team to me, you're just bring guys in.
Yeah.
Like, you're trying to
for sure. Talent first, sort it out later.
Taking shots here. Like, getting a guy like Bo Byram in. Yeah. I loved him in the World Juniors. I followed him through there. Came to Colorado. I'm like, they got him, and you see what he does and then he kind of goes away or whatever. But to me, Kevin Adams, that could be one of those trades we look back on where it's like Erat for Philip Forsberg type of trade.
By the way, great reference.
Thank you.
God, Forsberg's just been in Nashville forever, having this great career.
Best duster in the league, too.
So last night you did one of your breakdown videos on the Buffalo Sabres.
Yeah, this is the other side of it.
Being soft.
It was embarrassing.
The Buffalo Sabres need a change, like no NHL team. The Islanders needed a change really bad.
Yeah.
They need a change in Buffalo. Like, the culture of that team, they're light, they're passive, they're permissive. There's too much talent to play like that.
So I had it on, and it Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen,
nice.
right? Thank you.
Well done.
Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. I like saying that. I won't say it one more time.
Sounds Hawaiian.
But he got run earlier in that game. And I was like, and they didn't really do much to respond. I was like, that wasn't pretty. Yeah. And then I kind of looked up again, and it happened again. I was like, I got to get that. I'm like, honey, I'm doing a video.
Quiet.
And I was just disgusted. I don't know who it was in Detroit, But he's going hard to the net, makes zero attempt to get out of the way.
Just plow.
Like, plows him. And they don't even go over to him. One guy just skates right by him. He's lying on the ice. You're up 7-2. It's the perfect time for chaos.
And also, this season's a bust anyway.
Yeah,
like, if you finish last, it's better.
Absolutely.
Go ahead and do what you got to do to say we're not okay with that.
I said in my video, if
that was the Leafs, this would be a national referendum on how soft they are.
There you go. That's what I said.
Response from the Sabres, especially up 7-2. Come on, guys.
Yeah, come on.
How impressive, Brandale. Nice pull.
But not even the Leafs. Any Canadian team.
Yeah.
If that was the Canucks and that happened, 650, my boy Riccio out there would be like, what's going on with this team? They're soft. It's just...
We'd have Sean Reynolds on the case in Winnipeg. It doesn't matter where you're at.
It's a huge conversation, and I'm sure they're maybe having it. They won 7-2, so it's... But, like, imagine Buffalo Kyper being like, I don't care about the win. It's about the response.
Peters and Rivet there.
Yeah,
you know someone's saying that.
I hated that from them, but, like... I hate it and love it. Love them getting Byram because, boy, can he play. And I think that's a good bet. And hated that response after he got
Byram,
ran.
Dahlin, Power, Thompson, Cousins, Krebs, Paterka, Benson, Tuck. Like, they have
Paterka
pieces to turn it around.
He shot one under the bar nice, too, last night.
They can turn it around, this team. Couple things to get to before the end. One of them is the Siegenthaler from the Devils. Going to miss extended period of time. Rempe already got the suspension.
Yeah, I know. I've been thinking a lot about the Rempe thing. Because I love Rempe and I want
Mania.
I want him to be around.
Empire State Building.
Everything. The Rem page. I love it all and I love what he represents. But I've watched the highlights again. It's bad showing, bud.
Crazy, man.
It's just I get not fighting McDermott early in the game, but you probably should have fought him then too. Because you did something. It's hockey. You did something into a rival.
Yeah.
Should have fought him early. I get maybe being like, hey, we don't want to do it at this point. Probably should have done it. But then to do that, chicken wing them, and then be skating,
to me,
waving.
It's the wave. If you don't want to fight, fine.
The wave is
to be like.
I'm happy that I hit this guy in the head and he's hurt and I get kicked out of the game.
I'm not fighting you, Nana.
That should be hanging your head going off the ice.
He's created more problems for himself now.
Absolutely.
The Calgary Flames have turned the corner. We thought they were going to turn. They traded a bunch of assets. All of a sudden, the team is just it ain't pretty, Sammy.
I'm a fan first, and I've actually really liked watching the Flames a lot of this year.
Scrappy,
good players, like
their young guys a lot.
And a lot of it has to do with their jerseys, if I'm being fully honest.
Beautiful.
They just fit my eye. Love watching them play. Like, I was watching them play Pittsburgh and the Pittsburgh's whites. I was like, oh, this is the nicest jersey match you could possibly have.
Beauty.
But, like, they were in it. They had won the 4 in a row. Remember, they had beat all those good teams. And we were like, oh, maybe they're going to have a chase. And I'm not getting after Conroy, because he made the right decision. They had to trade all these guys. They had to sell off. But it sucks as a fan because you're like, oh, we're scrappy. We're fun. We're in it. Maybe we won't sell. And it's like, we sell, and now we just reek.
It's like, and now Dryden Hunt's on the second line.
Now we ain't winning anything, and we're going to suck. We suck. It's going to be 18 games of we suck.
But you know what they have? The bright spots are Pelche's going to get run with real players. Coronado's going to,
that's how you sell yourself on it, that you have fun young guys that get to play.
Miromanov's in the lineup. You're right. It's sort of take a look from there. So.
I feel for my Calgary brethren.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you. See, day number 1, sans Kip. What a breeze. Nice to have you in that seat for a day. Tomorrow, we will be back. You'll be in the seat for both hours.
Yes.
I believe, do we have Petrilli for sure tomorrow? All right, well, we'll ask him after the show. Sorry, Anthony, that we didn't ask you first. But yeah, we'll get into it a little bit there. And tonight, it's Winnipeg and Nashville. I'll be on that game, so tune in. Thank you to Kristen Shilton. Very much appreciate her time. And to JD Bunkis for joining us in studio. This has been Real Kyper and Bourne. We will see you tomorrow.